My parents funded my brother's failed business, left me in debt, and now want to meet my daughter until I drop a truth bomb that changes everything. Hey Reddit. Growing up, my family was far from perfect, but I always thought we were close. My parents, while strict, seemed fair in their expectations. They always emphasized the importance of family and looking out for one another. Little did I know that this sentiment applied only selectively. I have an older brother, James. Growing up, James was the golden child. He excelled at sports, got decent grades, and was charismatic to a fault. I, on the other hand, was the quieter, studious one. I wasn't bad at school or in trouble with anyone, but I guess I didn't shine in the same way James did. My parents always seemed to have a soft spot for him, but I chalked it up to normal sibling dynamics. Things became clearer when we both reached adulthood. James decided to pursue entrepreneurship, a bold move that my parents praised to no end. He had grand ideas about opening a restaurant that would eventually turn into a chain. The issue was, James had zero experience in the food industry. He wasn't a chef, had no managerial background, and honestly, I doubted he'd even worked a cash register. But my parents, ever the optimists, backed him wholeheartedly. When I say backed, I mean they invested nearly their entire savings into his venture. They even refinanced their house to provide him with seed money. At the time, I was working my way through college, taking out loans and juggling part-time jobs. I didn't get a penny from them, but I didn't complain. I figured they had faith in James and I could handle things on my own. The restaurant opened with much fanfare but was a disaster from the start. James overspent on decor, hired inexperienced staff, and made poor business decisions at every turn. Within a year, it was clear the restaurant was sinking, and no amount of family support could save it. My parents, however, continued to pour money into the failing business, taking out additional loans to keep it afloat. During this time, I graduated college and started working. My starting salary wasn't huge, but I was proud of the stability I had earned. I met my now husband, Ethan, and we began planning our future together. However, as my parents' financial situation worsened, they started leaning on me for help. It began innocently enough. They asked for small loans to cover emergencies, promising to pay me back once things settled down. I wanted to support them, so I agreed. But the requests kept coming. Soon, they were asking for larger sums, and when I hesitated, they guilted me with lines like "we've done so much for you" or "family helps family." By the time James' restaurant finally closed its doors, my parents were drowning in debt. And so was I. I had naively co-signed a few of their loans, thinking it was temporary, and now I was stuck with repayments I could barely afford. Meanwhile, James dusted himself off and moved on without any apparent consequences. He relocated to another state, started a new job, and left the mess behind. Despite everything, I managed to pull myself up. Ethan and I worked hard to pay off the debts and build a stable life. We eventually bought a modest home and welcomed our daughter, Lily, into the world. Becoming a parent changed everything for me. It made me fiercely protective, not just of Lily but of the life we were building. My relationship with my parents, however, was strained. They rarely checked in unless they needed something. When I tried to bring up the financial burden they'd left me with, they dismissed my concerns or acted like I was overreacting. I learned to keep my distance, but the resentment lingered. Fast forward a few years, and my parents reached out, saying they wanted to visit and meet Lily. They hadn't shown much interest in her since her birth, so their sudden eagerness caught me off guard. I agreed to a visit, though part of me was wary. When they arrived, it didn't take long for the old patterns to resurface. My parents began talking about how they were struggling financially and hinted that I should step up and help. They even suggested that Ethan and I could move them into our home to make things easier for everyone. I was furious but tried to stay calm. I told them we weren't in a position to take on more responsibilities, especially after everything that had happened in the past. That's when my mother dropped the bombshell. "We sacrificed everything for James because we knew you'd be fine on your own. You've always been the responsible one, so we thought you could handle it." That was the breaking point for me. I realized they had never seen me as an equal, just as a backup plan. They had gambled everything on James and left me to clean up the mess, all while assuming I'd just deal with it because I was responsible. I stood up and told them the truth I'd been holding back for years. I explained how their choices had affected my life, how I'd spent years struggling to pay off debts that weren't mine, and how I couldn't forgive them for putting me in that position. I told them they had treated me as a safety net, not a daughter, and that I was done being their fallback plan. Their faces went pale. My father tried to defend their actions, saying they did what they thought was best, but I wasn't interested in excuses. I told them they couldn't meet Lily until they took responsibility for their actions and made a genuine effort to repair our relationship. They left shortly after, clearly shocked that I had stood up to them. It's been months since the confrontation, and while I occasionally feel guilty for cutting them off, I know it was the right decision. My priority is Lily and ensuring she grows up in a loving, supportive environment. As for James, he reached out once, trying to mediate, but I shut him down. He has never acknowledged the role he played in all of this, and I have no interest in rekindling that relationship. Family is important, but so is self-respect. I've learned that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary. And for the first time in my life, I feel free. Update. So much has happened since I last posted, and I wanted to share what's been going on. The aftermath of my conversation with my parents left me emotionally drained, but also relieved. I've always been the one to keep the peace in my family, to be the mediator, and to absorb all the tension. So standing up for myself was something new, and honestly, a bit terrifying. I wasn't sure how they would react, especially my mother. She's always had this way of making me feel guilty for even the smallest things, so I didn't expect her to take it well. After they left that day, I didn't hear from them for about a week. At first, I thought maybe it was just the shock of it all, but as days passed, the silence started to feel heavy. I won't lie, I kept checking my phone, hoping for some kind of message, anything to ease the tension. I wondered if maybe I'd gone too far, if I should have tried to handle things differently. But then I remembered how much I had been hurt and the years of frustration I'd carried with me. A week later, I got a call from James. At first, I was hesitant to pick up. The last time I spoke to him about anything serious was when he asked me for help after the restaurant went under. I had already given him so much, emotionally and financially, and all I got in return was silence. So when I saw his name on the screen, I felt a rush of anger. But I answered. James was surprisingly calm. He asked how I was doing and said he was worried about me. He said he hadn't realized how much I'd been affected by everything that happened with the business and my parents. He even admitted that maybe he hadn't been the best brother or been as supportive as he should have been. It wasn't a full-on apology, but it was the closest thing to one I'd gotten from him. He also asked if we could meet to talk things through. I told him that I wasn't ready, and I wasn't sure if I would ever be. The conversation didn't last much longer after that, but I was left with this strange feeling. I wasn't sure if I should believe him. Was he truly sorry? Or was this just another way for him to get out of the mess he helped create? I haven't responded to James since. I'm not sure what the next step should be, and I think I need more time to figure it out. I've been focusing on my own life, on Ethan and Lily, and what we want as a family. Things have been more peaceful since the confrontation with my parents, but I know I can't keep avoiding them forever. I'm just not ready to face them again. Thanks to everyone who supported me during that time. It means more than you can imagine. I'll keep you all updated as things unfold. Another update. I've been avoiding my parents for weeks now, and I think it's starting to weigh on me more than I'd like to admit. It's not that I miss them, I don't. But I've been wondering if maybe I took the wrong approach. After all, they are still my parents, and despite everything, they gave me life and raised me. I've spent so many years resenting them that I wonder if I've gone too far in shutting them out entirely. But here's the thing, I've been thinking a lot about what I said that day and the consequences of it. Standing up for myself was something I desperately needed to do, but I also need to be honest with myself, I didn't just do it for me. I did it for Lily. I want her to grow up knowing that she can set boundaries, that she can speak her truth without fearing the consequences. I decided to reach out to my parents last week, though I wasn't sure how they'd react. I wrote them an email, telling them that I needed space, but I also needed them to understand why I'd said what I did. I explained that I wasn't just angry about the past, I was angry about how their decisions had impacted my present and future. It wasn't a message full of blame, but I made sure they knew I wouldn't just sweep everything under the rug. A few days later, I received a response from my mother. It was a long email, and it took me a few attempts to read through it because I could feel the weight of every word. She apologized. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was genuine. She admitted that they had made mistakes, that they had placed too much pressure on me, and that they had neglected me in favor of James. She even said she didn't realize the extent to which her actions had hurt me, and that she was willing to do whatever it took to rebuild our relationship. It's hard to describe how I felt reading those words. Part of me wanted to forgive her right away, to say that everything was okay. But another part of me wasn't sure if I could ever truly forget the pain they caused me. It's not just about the money, it's about how they treated me like I was always second place. I haven't replied to her yet. I'm still processing everything. Part of me wants to accept her apology and move forward, but another part of me is scared. Scared that if I open that door again, I'll be hurt all over again. I'm still unsure about what to do, but I know I need to make the right decision for me and for Lily. Final update. I wanted to give you all the final update after all this time, because I feel like I've finally reached a place where I'm at peace with everything. After my last update, I really struggled with whether or not I should let my parents back into my life. It was a constant battle between wanting to forgive them and wanting to keep my distance for my own mental health. But after a lot of thought, a few deep conversations with Ethan, and some personal reflection, I finally replied to my mother's email. I told her that I appreciated her apology, and I acknowledged that it meant a lot to me. However, I also told her that I couldn't just forget the past. I needed time, real time, to rebuild trust with her and my father. I wasn't sure what that looked like yet, but I wasn't ready to just jump back into a relationship as if nothing had happened. To my surprise, she was understanding. In her response, she said she would give me the space I needed, but that she would also be there when I was ready to talk more. I think that was the turning point for me. I had set a boundary, and instead of getting upset or defensive, she respected it. A few weeks later, I agreed to meet them in person. It wasn't a grand gesture, just a casual coffee, but it felt like a huge step. When we sat down, I could tell things were different. There was no guilt tripping, no hidden agendas. They were just trying to have an honest conversation, and that was something I hadn't felt from them in years. We talked about everything: the business, the debts, the pain they caused me, but we also talked about the future. We talked about Lily, and how I wanted her to have a healthy relationship with them, but that it had to be on my terms. Since then, we've been slowly rebuilding our relationship. It's not perfect, and I'm not expecting it to be, but there's been genuine effort from both sides. I'm still cautious, and I don't know if I'll ever fully trust them the way I used to, but I'm learning to let go of the anger. I'm sharing this final update because I've realized that healing isn't always about cutting people off completely or holding on to grudges. Sometimes it's about finding a balance between protecting yourself and allowing room for growth. It's okay to set boundaries, to take time for yourself, and it's also okay to give people a second chance if they're willing to put in the effort. Thank you all for your support throughout this journey. I couldn't have made it through without you.